Welcome to The Liberation Effect with me, your host, Helen Villas. Hello and welcome back to another episode. Today I am joined by Laura, and Laura wrote in asking whether she's still struggling with people pleasing and causing anxious feelings when she says no, particularly in her work life, in the corporate environment. Laura, welcome and thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
I am well, thank you. It's lovely to be invited on to speak about this.
Oh, I'm really glad. Thank you so much. So, why don't you just expand sort of what it is you're looking to get from today, what you're struggling with, and kind of tell us, what you need, I suppose.
So I've been in my corporate position now for nearly 14 years. I'm a fully remote worker, which I think adds a complexity to this, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, from the start. And I'm on a journey into hopefully senior executive level. I've been working my way through that. And I really struggle with people pleasing. And that's both from direct reports, so me into my team that I have, and then also up into the C-suite and the senior level executives. And I think it's a tricky, for me, I find it tricky to balance with the potential of moving into burnout specifically, because I take on too much.
Right, got you.
I don't want to say no. And the reason I don't want to say no is because I fear the rejection, which is possibly not real. I work for a very supportive organisation. I feel very psychologically safe there. In fact, probably more so in my career than I ever have, having come back from 2 maternity leaves that I've had as well.
Right.
And it's impacting me in my day-to-day life because I want to be able to push back respectfully without then internalizing that and thinking and fearing it before I perhaps get on a one-to-one with my manager. I'm worrying, this is the workload that I've got. And there are times that it impacts me to my detriment. I will pick up work in the evenings and I will log on at weekends. There is no expectation for me to do that.
Right.
But I do it to cope with the amount of times I say yes to things.
Okay.
And I want to balance that better.
So it's the fear of, if I say no, then they're going to be angry with me, reject me. What else? What else would happen?
I think probably at a worst case scenario that they're going to sack me, which when I say it out loud feels silly because I've been there for 14 years. That's not it's not a real point at any time in that, but that's the worst case scenario for me. And probably just being disliked as a person, don't give that to Laura because she might not have the capacity to be able to do it and not do the best job that she could with that task. And it causes me lots of negative, anxious feelings, and I just want to let them go. And I feel that they are impacting and holding me back from the potential of my upward journey into being part of the C-suite, really.
Okay, tell me what the C-suite is, because you said that a couple of times and I have no idea what that means. What does that mean?
So that's sort of chief exec, senior, chief of something. So you could be vice president. We have in our organisation VPs, presidents, directors. It's that level, but in corporate work, corporate C-suite,
Okay. And I would expect at that level, people would be expected to have really pretty good boundaries.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I see those exemplified really well and confidently. So it isn't as if that is not being exemplified down. I just struggle with that fear of rejection, the fear of not wanting to be able to lean on me. And ultimately, that's impacting me from being my authentic self and comfortable in the role that I have. And I think it even leans into, oh, crikey, what is that word? Imposter syndrome.
Right.
It
Yeah.
really leans into that imposter syndrome. It's a whole circle of those types of feelings where I want to people please. If I can't people please and not take on certain activities, then perhaps I'm not very good at my job. I should be better at my job. Am I even
Right.
in the right job for me? And that's really troublesome. Wait, especially when you're trying to further your career and yourself.
Sure. So is this present elsewhere in your life? This kind of not saying no to things or being over helpful, or
So interestingly, it's better. It's better since
right?
I've been in therapy for the last several years. And I had very similar feelings with my siblings.
Right.
I would often take on all the tasks. So that's okay. Just
Right.
Laura will handle it for you. I was always
Okay.
the organizer, always willing and able to put my hand up, for babysitting duties, putting myself
Right.
out to attend those. I have become so much better at
Okay.
those and learning to say no and know that my sister's not going to stop loving me because I've said no and I've set a boundary.
Okay. So when you've put those boundaries in, what has the reaction been?
Very understanding.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So has anyone reacted badly to you having boundaries?
Previously, yes, that would come from my mum
Okay.
and the relationship, a very strained relationship that I had with her. And really where I started to learn the dynamics in therapy, learning that dynamic of that relationship that I had with my mum.
Do you know, it's so interesting, isn't it? I really see a parallel relationship between bosses, chief people, authority figures, and parents. So when you're in the corporate space, how childlike are you feeling? How small? How young?
Yeah, that has actually just, that feels like that has triggered something, a feeling I can relate to. It is. I'm probably teenage at that
Okay.
point. If I think back now, I'm transacting as teenage Laura.
And how does teenage Laura feel generally? What was her experience?
Her experience was not heard. She was not listened to. She was probably not as nowhere near as confident. Very much wanted to kind of disappear into the background, not be seen. And
Oh, so if you say no, then you're seen, aren't you? Okay,
it's
carry
quite
on, sorry.
revealing. And also teenage Laura would be quite often at loggerheads with her mum.
Okay.
And yeah, also had a fair amount of trauma during that time as well in terms of relationship with my dad or lack thereof,
Okay.
and siblings as well.
So teenage Laura wanted to hide in the background, didn't want to be seen, didn't want to ruffle feathers or but also was at loggerheads with mum.
Yes.
So what were the loggerheads about?
Loggerheads were about not telling her everything that was going on in my life. So at that point, I started to be a bit more selective with, I had a real child, Laura, had to tell her mum everything.
Right.
Absolutely everything. And it was a real compulsion to, it would stop a child, Laura, from sleeping. And I had to let her know any bad thoughts that I had had. Very anxious. And then moving into teenagehood, I began to learn that I didn't have to share everything.
Right.
And that actually not sharing everything would sometimes be of benefit because then later on, mum couldn't twist that against me.
Okay.
and bring it up at a later date. So I did have this battle of always going from always sharing everything
Hmm.
to, and it was one of my siblings actually that said that to me. She, you do know you don't have to tell mum everything.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, and it was like a light bulb moment, really, because
Yeah.
mum would press me for all the details.
Oof.
And then, yeah, so that teenage time was really where the conflict between me and her came from me withholding the details. And then I became, you're just so unsympathetic. You're always so quiet. You never tell me anything these days. What are you holding back?
Okay.
And that could get quite unpleasant and nasty.
Of course, because, well, there's an accusation of deception, duplicitousness. There's just you're a bad human being if you don't tell me absolutely everything about you, and I'm entitled to it. And if you don't want to tell me it, it's you that's the problem, not me. Yeah?
Yes, exactly that. Yes.
So tell me what it was like when, so she, if you said no, I'm not telling you stuff, she would cast all these aspersions on you and your character. And the word I'm hearing is selfish, actually. Is that something? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Sure.
because I wonder now if saying no at work means you're being selfish too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I struggle to do anything that puts me first.
Okay. So when you say no at work, what does it say about you? Let me clarify that. Let me just, put some parameters around that. What do you think other people think it says about you?
I think it says that she's selfish, that she's not very good at her job, because why couldn't she manage all of those things? I think it says, they would say, perhaps not trust me with future big projects or stretch tasks.
Go to the emotions, or go to the kind of assumption about your character.
Okay. So that it's a hard one to put words into. I think selfish is definitely up there. I'm not a bad person.
Okay, so the same sort of things that your mother would say?
I'm just a bad person, and that I'm, yeah.
Okay. How does it feel when someone says to you, no, I can't take that on? What do you think?
Well, fair enough.
Okay, so
okay, it's very simple. Oh, right, okay.
Okay. So
and I feel glad that they can do that for themselves.
Okay, envious at all that they can do?
Yeah.
Fair, and which is valid. Like, we can look at something and think, I want that. I want that for myself. And yeah, there's something very similar about that, the parent-child relationship that you experienced with your mother, and what's happening in work now. And I hear this kind of, the assumption is I'm not good enough, right? And the lesson you learned in childhood or teenage years was you're not good enough if you say no. And in fact, what's interesting is you're tying it to that teenage space, but I wonder, children don't naturally want to tell their parents everything. That's a conditioned thing, that children want to have little secrets. They like it, and they like having, because it's about their autonomy and their identity and things. So somewhere you were taught very early in childhood that no is a bad word. So when you go back to earlier childhood, have you got any recollection of feeling or anything at all?
Well, yes. I would, for a couple of different reasons. I think there was a period of time, probably between the ages of about 7 and 9, that was when my parents separated and divorced.
Right.
And it was quite a nasty divorce.
Okay.
So I'm the youngest of my mum's 4 children. And I was quite often grilled when I came in, having had time. So I didn't actually have alone time with my dad at that point. It was going through the family court system. But what I did have is some appointments with what I could believe was probably social services or somebody facilitating a meeting at that point. You're talking back in the 90s now with my dad. And when I would come home, what were you talking about? What did you say? What did he say? And then from a second point, after my parents separated, my mum very much went down a road of drug and alcohol abuse.
Okay.
And I remember this was at the time, it's always a fairly hot topic, but at the time it was a very hot topic, particularly in schools, because we had recently in the media had a story around there was a young girl who had overdosed on drugs, and it was all over the news. And so as a result of that at school, we would often have external speakers coming to deliver sessions to us about drink spiking and things like that. And I remember my mum explicitly saying to me, don't let on that you know too much. Ooh. Because, I had seen these things at home going on. There were parties that my mum was going out a lot. It was very visual at home. And I remember her saying, don't put your hand up to say that you know what any of those drugs look like or what the names for them are or if that you've seen them.
Wow.
And that was said to me a lot. It was said, as soon as something would come home from school, a letter that would say, we're going to have this talk come into assembly or something. Mm-hmm. I was sat down and said, you must remember that you can't tell the teachers about this and you can't put your hand up to say that you know what the name is for cocaine or things like that. So she wanted me to divulge everything to her, but also kept a very tight boundary on what I was allowed to divulge to other people.
So this is such enmeshment. First of all, I just want to pause and just go, it is disgusting that she put you in that position. And I am so sorry, because what she said is you're not allowed help. Mm-hmm. You're not allowed support. You're not allowed to show people how difficult you find it at home, what situation you're living in, that you might need removing from that situation, and silenced you so greatly. The fury I feel for you as like that, it's just awful of a parent to put their child in that position. But I also am so struck by that enmeshment of she wants you to keep all her secrets, so you become like symbiotic. So you've got all her secrets and she's got all your secrets, but neither of you are allowed. They don't go out anywhere else. Okay. And maybe she can do whatever she wants with your secrets, but you're not allowed to do anything with her secrets.
Yeah, very much.
So you lose all kind of autonomy in that.
Yeah, and do you know, I remember something that always comes back to me, and I must have been said 8 at a push. And I remember being at school one day and seeing the other mums come and pick their children up from school. And quite often during this period of time, mum would forget to pick me up from school, be late quite often, and I would have to stay later with the teacher and things like that. God. And I remember just thinking in my head, I wish that I had such and such as mum. And it was just a thought in my brain. And that ate me up so much that when I got home, I said to mum, I've got to tell you about, and we used to call them bad think abouts. And I had to share with her my bad think about, which was I wished for a moment that I had a different mum.
And how did she react to that?
I remember her being grateful that I had shared it with her. But I don't remember her being upset by that comment or angry by that comment. I feel like I remember her just taking that comment on board and not really doing much with it. either way, very unemotive about it.
I can tell you why. Do you know why?
No.
If she had reacted, you would have either tried to explain it,
Yeah.
or obviously got upset by it, and that would have made it bigger, and so you'd have maybe told someone. But also, the biggest reason is that she did not want to look at why that was there. So she dismissed it because any other reaction would have provoked a conversation or a explanation from you. Whereas just because they get to go home and they get to go, and I just, because you're always late, and she didn't want to look at her own behaviour.
Sure.
Because my first question, in fact, funnily enough, my own daughter, who's 8 at the moment, said to me the other day, "Oh, I wish I was Tom's sister." And there's a little boy in her class, and I was like, my first comment, "Oh, why is that?" Nothing else. Why is that? Well, because he gets to go home at 4:30 when school finishes. She has to go to late stay quite often. And it was like, yeah, no, I get that. I understand that. So hear the difference of, I want to know why, whereas your mum straight dismissed it.
Yeah.
Not out of hand, not discussing that, not inviting you to explain it, just going to pretend you didn't even say it. Which in itself is just awful. So
Yeah.
How do you feel right now thinking about it?
It's confronting.
Mm-hmm.
But if my therapy journey has taught me anything, that is a good thing to do, to confront and speak in a safe space about the experiences that I had, because what I now know is that they were wrong. That wasn't
really wrong.
A normal childhood. It wasn't normal to be around lots of narcotics and alcohol. And it was not normal to be told not to say certain things to certain people and not be able to also speak out for my own safety in those experiences that I had.
Did you hear what you just said?
My own safety.
Right. And what were we talking about you doing with boundaries? Protecting yourself.
Protecting myself. Yeah.
You're not allowed to speak up for your safety. And saying no is for your safety.
And to protect my boundaries and my time and my well-being. That's what I'm looking for. My well-being, to avoid that burnout.
Yeah. Your mental and physical well-being.
Yeah. That's big.
It felt quite big just then, I think, that felt huge.
Yeah, and it really, I relate. It feels so quite often. One of the ways that I will talk about when something feels right in my journey of therapy is I feel quite often in my central core here in my stomach.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can feel that feels right. I can feel that is I feel that we're on to something with my safety. And for the longest amount of time, I wasn't in a safe environment. Not as a child nor a teen. And it's interesting, something else that you touched on around the dynamic of the kind of boss direct report relationship there. I have often felt that my boss does become a bit of a mother figure. So she's female.
Right. Oh, right. Okay.
And we aren't too dissimilar in age. So I feel as if quite often I feel older sister vibes.
Right. Got you.
With her from a protective perspective, because she does create psychological safety is number one.
Amazing.
But I definitely struggle quite often when I put myself in the position of saying no to her. I feel like I'm saying no to my oldest sister.
Okay.
And she was quite often my mum's scapegoat out of all of so there's 4 of us. And she would go between being mum's best friend, then being the reason for all of the problems. And she had a really, really difficult time in our family dynamic with my mum.
Right.
Probably,
Right.
well, I would say probably more than any of the other siblings, but I also feel that we've experienced it all in different ways.
Absolutely, you have. Yeah, for sure.
And so it doesn't, the way that she experienced it doesn't invalidate how I experienced
Absolutely.
childhood and
Good.
vice versa.
Good.
But yes, I often do see my manager in the older sister role, and I don't want to disappoint her. I don't want to, I'm also going back to your point, it's not that she doesn't make me feel safe, but I don't feel safe saying no. That's not because
I know,
my
I
older
got
sister,
you.
or
Yeah.
her created that environment. But I don't do it because, it's not putting my well-being at the forefront is not what I grew up doing.
But also, I wonder, if you say no to her, do you lose her protection?
Now that's interesting.
Or the fear is that you would?
Yeah. I think that there's definitely a fear that I would lose the kind of older sister protection from her. She quite often refers to me as her right-hand man.
Right.
And I like having that role there because it makes me feel wanted, and it makes me feel that I'm doing the things that I should be doing. And if I say no, that she won't lean on me for those things. And
that you lose your place.
Yeah.
And
that
then
I
you
lose my
lose your
place.
value. But I also noticed then again, with your mum, there's also a parallel again with the dynamic of, as children, even though our environments are really damaging and toxic and awful, they're what we know. And so they are what we believe to be safe and familiar and everything else and comfortable. And so you speaking up or saying no to your mother even would have maybe meant losing her protection too. And the safety of being in that home. If you had said something to somebody, I know what that drug's called, or, you'd have lost that safety.
Yeah, for sure. Because mum would often say, well, you'll get taken away.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay. So here you go. So if I protect myself, I lose everything. I lose all my safety. So if I say no, I not only lose your protection, but I also lose my job. I lose my career. So can you see how, so the no is so catastrophic, and where that's coming from is that when you were a child, if you had revealed anything, your no is catastrophic.
Yeah. And it's all or nothing.
Yeah, but it's not, it's the conditioned belief. And it because you were told, if you have a voice, you will lose everything.
Yes.
And that's exactly what's happening in the workplace. If I have a voice, I will lose absolutely everything.
Yes.
And so safest just to keep quiet, and then I also get to keep that relationship. Yes. Yeah.
For
But at the cost of myself and my burnout.
Absolutely.
So if we think about where you might have said no to this boss, what's happened in those times that you've done that?
So in the times that I've done that, she's just gone, oh, okay. And quite honestly, I had an example very recently where she wanted me to set up a secret gift exchange because we're coming to the end of the year.
Right.
And one of the dual roles that I have is I lead on ironically, our well-being and diversity initiatives that we have. And my first thought was, I just do not have capacity to do that today. It is not a priority in my workload. And so, but I went back to her and I said, yeah, sure, I'll get that organized today and I'll set it up on the app and I'll get that. And then she responded back going, you don't need to do it. Ask one of the other committee members to do it. They're more than capable of doing it. And I was like, oh, okay. And even there, because I thought to myself, if I didn't even have the option of saying to her, I'll delegate. Yes, I'll delegate that out to X. And instead immediately wanted to take that task on for myself without a second thought of saying no. But it was her that actually then said to me, she knew that I didn't have capacity to do that in that day. And no, absolutely delegate that to somebody else.
Right.
And I thought, oh yeah, I will. What a good idea.
Okay.
It hadn't occurred to me to do that in the first place.
If it had occurred to you, would you have said it? Or was it her giving you permission to do it that let you?
Giving me permission to do it that let me.
Because this is the thing, right? Because I imagine your brain just doesn't even consider it because it's not an option, because it threatens safety again. What do you mean you have to delegate it? I'm telling you to do it, right?
Yeah.
If you're scared of rejection, of saying no, have no idea how to trust people, you're not alone, and you don't have to heal alone either. That's what the Hub is for. It's a membership community designed for survivors just like you. Every month, we dive into powerful courses, we hold live calls and connect in a supportive, understanding space so you can break free from the past and build healthy, fulfilling relationships. Maybe it's time to stop surviving and instead start thriving. Visit jointhehub.ac today using the code POD20 to get £20 off your first month's membership. I can't wait to see you there. Take care. Bye. But I'm going to reframe delegation for you, because people feel like this, right? Often around delegation, in that it's an example of them not being able to cope and not, managing their workload and all of that sort of stuff. But when we don't delegate, we inhibit other people from growing. And when we start thinking of it as a selfless act rather than a selfish act, that we're actually doing something kind for people by saying, hey, I believe that you've got the capability to do this task. Would you like to have a go? That makes them feel good. It gives them a skill set. Do you know what I mean? There's loads of growth in that for somebody.
It's empowering.
Hugely. And good managers delegate, right? That's like what you do, is you spread the workload so nobody is, there's a balance. So everybody's kind of managing within their skill set and learning at the same time. So there's that, just to kind of give you a little reframe around the delegation being an unsafe thing. It's a kind of positive for other people and indeed you, but you're helping other people grow by doing that. But going back to the relationship with your boss, particularly this kind of protective force field. Did your mum feel like a force field ever or not?
Oh, yes. And I think that's because it was drummed into us, kind of blood is thicker than water, and we do everything in the name of the family, and very toxic positivity in terms of our family, direct family unit. Absolutely.
So everything in the family, kept in the family, but the rules of the family, you mustn't say no, and you mustn't share anything outside of the family.
Yeah.
So you belong to the family. They own you. Do you own them? Does it work both ways, or is it just that you own?
No, I don't own them.
Interesting. Why do you think that? Because that feels again like it's being repeated, that work owns you, but you don't own work.
I think in the context of the family, so I don't know whether that is coming from being the youngest of the children, but I never once thought. So my fear was always saying no to my siblings and my mum, never the other way around. They could say no to me all the time, and that would be fine. Yeah, I think in the sense of work, I'm struggling with that one, if I'm honest. I'm struggling to think of to relate with it, is there a different way we could rephrase the question?
Around them having ownership of you and not. Okay. Well, I think you already kind of touched on it with the idea that they can discard you really easily, but you're not allowed to discard them. That your position in the workplace is dependent on you always saying yes, but accepting everyone else's no's.
Yeah.
And that sounds very similar to the family dynamic. The idea that the ownership part being that your identity belongs to the family. And is the same for work, that you feel like your identity is quite tied up in your work?
Yes. I mean, for the last few years, certainly, I think I had a period of time where I was off on maternity leave, having both of my children, that I think my attention was elsewhere. So I was definitely more it was mum mode first at that point. And I think having come back and now my children are 5 and 7, I'm emerging into who am I and who am I at work? And I have this journey ahead of me that I would like to climb and I would like to aspire. I have aspirations. And so I do feel that probably for the last 18 months to 2 years, that my identity has been work for that, a significant, because I'm like, if I just, and there have been times where I've felt so close to burnout with my husband that I'm like, I don't know how much longer I can sustain this for. And I will go to him, well, let's just get to Christmas. Let's get to the next 3 months. It will get better. And actually the reality is that until I start making that happen, I will just keep pushing that bar out another 3 or 6 months. It says, give us another 3 months, give us another 6 months to see where I am at that point. And I think that will feed into that back to me and that boundary set in.
Yeah.
Because I have got, at the moment, my identity is it's working mum, but also mum that wants to aspire to great things.
So the risk of losing it is ridiculously high, right?
Yes. And we're at a period of time where in the same time, we've gone down to a 1-income family. My husband is back at college studying to be a counsellor. Yeah. And we're very fortunate that I have been able to therefore take on that extra responsibility. But again, it feeds that, while at the moment I have to be it all because I'm also the sole provider at the moment, or thereabouts. I mean, what my husband doesn't bring in income, he's available for the childcare.
Sure.
Which I make no, I understand that without him doing that role at home, I wouldn't have the ability to be able to travel for work like I do, be away for multiple evenings during the week and things like that. So it's enabled me to progress.
Yes.
But it does create an extra burden to me to shoulder, and knowing that I have the responsibility of being the financial income at home.
Okay. Which is in fact why it's even more important that you do not burn out, right? Because you can't take the time off work. So the thing about it is, what we're going to have to try and do is rewire your brain. And that's no easy feat, because what I am hearing is absolutely a relational pattern playing out at work, in that your safety depends on you being silent and compliant and not challenging, not rocking the boat, not meeting your needs, not even identifying them, not delegating, like all this, I just have to do everything, otherwise I'm not safe. And so what I might offer with that is that first thing that we need to do is be doing this in small places. So not just in work, not talking about just boundary setting in work, and making sure that you're doing it outside so that you're giving yourself lots of evidence around that if I say no, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean catastrophe, that I'm allowed to do that, and that if someone reacts badly to that, it's about them, not me, etc. Before we start doing it at work, but even at work, but just doing tiny no's. So it's things like, can you see it, send an email, rather than saying, yeah, I'll do it now. It's, yeah, I'll do it in 5 minutes. So just, do you see how you're not doing the all or nothing? You're going very gently into the like, oh, okay, no. But also, if your boss is supportive, have you had this conversation with her?
Yes and no. She has, as I mentioned before, it's very psychologically safe. So I do share with her a lot of how I'm feeling. And since reporting into her, which has only been for about 18 months now, I did come from a position before where I didn't feel as psychologically safe. And she's coached me a heck of a lot in that time to feel empowered. And, you know, previously I would have to run emails past my manager.
Right.
To check that what I was saying was okay.
From your perspective or theirs? Sorry.
From my perspective.
From you. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Got
and
you.
now we're at a position where I send them without even a second thought now of
Brilliant.
running them past anybody.
Right.
And we often now reflect on and joke, not, you know, very lightheartedly and supportively, you know, do you remember what it was like 18 months ago when I would ping you and say, oh, I just need to send this email out. Can you read it with me? Yeah. And we did a lot of shadowing. So we did a lot of working together to not even necessarily speaking. So we created an online virtual room to help shadow with activities to promote motivation.
Okay,
and I think that really, really worked. And also knowing small and incremental ways that she let me know that what's the worst that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And by reassuring me in a small and incremental way, it has helped me in other tasks being able to, because I mean, last year I really struggled with making mistakes because of course I have to be perfect at every opportunity and I can never make a mistake because if I make a mistake, then, you know, the world's going to implode.
Yeah.
And I had at one point, she said to me, deliberately make a mistake, deliberately do it. And
I like that.
Know
amazing.
that it's going to be okay. And sure enough, at one point, it wasn't actually deliberate, but at one point a mistake did happen. And I rang her and I said, can't believe it, but I didn't read this line and it's going to, and she's like, it's okay. We can deal with it. Is it solvable? And I was like, yeah, it's solvable. And she was like, let's do it together then. And that, the impact of that for me was monumental. And so I feel that the progress that I have made in my self-development has been good. Yeah. But it's this final hurdle and challenge, I feel, that I just need to be able to feel comfortable in myself saying no. And I think what you just said a moment ago about challenging that and working on it in small incremental steps, I think is what's going to be able to help me move on and develop that part of myself.
Yes, because so learning to say no is one of the hardest things when you've grown up in these environments, because you're so conditioned to see it as a threat. And I mean a huge threat to your physical sometimes, but emotional always, safety. That if you say no or disagree, have a different opinion, want a different thing, that means the cost is so high. The risk is so high. And if for you in your circumstance, even then, the whole speaking up for your safety being laden with absolute danger. So, it's a double whammy. So this is going to be absolutely about taking it in these tiny steps. And this is what I would give to anybody struggling with saying no, is don't walk in and say, no, I'm not doing that project, or, I refuse, like off the bat.
Yeah.
It's going, no, I don't want a drink right now. And, it's, no, I'm not ready for lunch, or no, I'm going to do this. And it's just tiny, tiny little no's that build, it's the kind of big build to the bigger one. So we're doing it, in these tiny little incremental steps where they're just kind of teaching us that it's okay, it's safe. You don't need to risk it. It's okay. What happens in your brain when you think about saying no? Like what's the kind of environment?
It feels very uncomfortable. It feels very so I've often wondered if I have a touch of, and I don't know if you can have a touch of, I assume you either have it or you don't, but rejection sensitivity.
Okay.
And I can feel almost pain in my stomach, where I said to you before that I feel a lot of those emotions when I can label them. It can make me sweat. It can make me feel very flustered. It can make me lose track of what I'm saying. It can make my brain go blank. It has a very negative impact physically, and in my brain, it's like big red warning signs going, no, don't say that. Just do it.
Do you know what you've just described?
No.
A fear response. That is panic.
Yeah.
The fear is so strong, you are having a physical reaction to it. Your amygdala is just going on high alert, just going, danger, like, don't do it. That's like, you're going to get annihilated, right? And your brain doesn't know the difference really between physical and emotional threat. Both are dangerous. Because in cave, I mean, I've talked about this so many times, but in caveman times, the emotional danger was just as dangerous, because if you got excluded from the tribe, then you would just die. That was it. Your line would be out, kind of thing. So your body reacting in that way is 100% a physical, like, fight, flight, freeze, fawn response to whatever's happening. What's really interesting, you say about rejection sensitivity, and you said, I have a touch, and I don't know if you can have a touch. Well, the thing about rejection sensitivity in terms of dysphoria, if you grow up in a toxic environment, you are going to end up with a rejection sensitivity without a doubt. There's just no way, because everything that was done to control you, to enmesh you, was all revolving around rejection. Okay? It was, I will reject you if you do not comply, if you do not agree. So you learn to hide all these bits of yourself that result in you getting rejected. And for you, one of those things, and for most of these people that grow up in these environments, is the word no. The disagreement that I'm an autonomous, different human being to you, right?
Yeah.
So you go into a situation now that threatens rejection, and it panics you, because as a child, and I wonder how old you feel when you think about that panic state, how old you feel in it, that would have been established in very early childhood and then capitalized on over and over and over again. So it becomes this giant trigger.
Yeah.
And absolutely, rejection sensitivity. There's a thing around neurodivergence and ADHD having rejection sensitivity dysphoria as part of ADHD. It's not true. The evidence to support that is all cyclical. It's just themselves backing themselves, and it's nobody's actually pulled it. There's not any replicated studies, as far as I know. There might be by the time this comes out, but rejection sensitivity dysphoria is not a natural part of ADHD or even something that you cannot work on or do anything about. And when we sit with that space of, well, I've got RSD, or even if it's not as full blown as RSD, I've got rejection sensitivity, we can disempower ourselves and tell ourselves that I just have to live with it. You don't. You can heal that. You can work on rejection and start learning how to accept rejection. And I would just really offer that in your brain is responding to rejection as the biggest threat. And, rightly so. It had to do that because it needed to keep you safe. But now it's obviously not helping because it's silencing you still and actually going to lead to you being burnt out. So when you think about being rejected, what do you actually feel? What are the thoughts, rather? What does it say about you if someone rejects you?
So it says that they will leave and that I will be abandoned.
Okay.
And it says about me that probably at its worst that they wouldn't love me, and that therefore I wouldn't be capable of their love if they rejected me.
Hang on a minute. That language was really interesting. I wouldn't be capable of their love. What do you mean? What do you mean capable?
That I'm not worthy of it.
Okay.
So,
capable sounds like work, though. It sounds like you wouldn't be able to earn it or hold it, or capable, like hold. Do you know what I mean? It just was a really interesting word choice, and I don't. Maybe it was the wrong word, but I believe in words and language and people saying what they mean without realizing that they've said what they mean, kind of thing. So I wonder if it feels like you have to work hard to be loved, and that you have to be a certain standard to earn somebody's love.
I mean, yes, it's definitely something that I've worked at as a child, and even into teenagehood, and still to this day with my siblings, that I still feel that I personally work towards. And I think that's where I mentioned earlier that I have got better with the boundary setting with my siblings. And that was because I had again, though, that fear, that very real fear that when I say no to them, that they're not going to love me and that they will just abandon me. And I think that speaks to a fair amount of abandonment that happened as well. And sudden loss as well. So, I mean, I lost my mum suddenly in 2013. And I also lost my older sister suddenly in 2008.
Okay. And
that rejection for me really speaks into a abandonment, a sudden a loneliness. It's very lonesome to not feel loved and to not be capable of somebody's love. And so I know that the rejection for me feels very, I think I'll probably come back to something we said earlier, it's very unsafe feeling. It's a fear of feeling unsafe. It's a fear of feeling alone and on my own.
So rejection means being unsafe, being alone, being left, abandoned, evidence that you're not capable, worthy of someone's love, that you're unlovable.
I think I've done quite a lot of work. I think if you would have asked me pre-therapy, I think I probably that answer to that question would have been different. But I think I have done quite a lot of work now to be able to know that I am lovable.
Good.
And that for me now, in my personal relationships, that's where I've been taking those small incremental no steps to learn that. Well, when I did say no to that, my sister didn't abandon me. She didn't stop loving me. You know, I did take those small steps to work on that. And I think if you'd have asked me that several years ago, I would have had a different response to what I do now, because it did come from a place of feeling that I wasn't lovable. but I have done a heck of a lot of work there to know that I am now. And I feel as if the last area for me to really start working on those small incremental changes is now corporate me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it comes back. I still practice it, and I still have to practice it every day in my personal relationships. And I think I probably will forever. There are still times, my sister, so my next oldest sister, she emigrated 3.5 years ago now to the Middle East.
Right.
And it comes up often about us going to visit her. And that comes at a big financial expense.
Yeah.
But the sense of panic and fear that I get saying no to her, that we can't come out this year to see you, it is still a challenge. I still say no because I've learned that it would put us into a financial jeopardy. It's not in our best well-being. It's not in the well-being of my family unit. And so I am able to go, this year we can't. It's just not going to be on the cards for us to be able to come out. But that still doesn't mean that when I say that now, that I still don't get that very visceral internal brain reaction that says to me, panic, fear, she's not going to love you, she's going to reject you, you're going to be alone. So I am getting there with knowing that that's not the case, and kind of relearning with myself that that isn't the case. When you say, not necessarily all the time. I appreciate sometimes when you say no, some people might have a negative reaction to that.
Yeah, and they do.
Yeah.
But that's about them, not you.
Exactly. And exactly that. So I know when I say no to my sister about coming out to the Middle East, if she gets angry about that, then that's on her.
Yeah.
I that's her reaction to what I have said. She never has. But I know now that even if I do say no in that scenario and there is a negative reaction to it, that's on them, not on me, because it's reasonable in what I've said to say no in that circumstance.
Right. And then on top of that, what does that tell you about your no? If someone reacts badly, what does it tell you about your no?
What did it tell me about my no? I don't know. If somebody reacted badly to my no, I don't know. I don't think I know the answer. I feel like I know the answer to that one. Because I think I think it would still make me feel quite panicked.
I'm sure.
Because I don't think I have actually had a response yet, which has been reacting badly to my no. So I don't actually think I've come across that to know what that feels like.
Well, that's an important piece of information to lodge in your brain too. But for me, your no is your greatest safety, because your no is the greatest bullshit filter. Because if someone reacts badly to my no, then they do not need to be in my life. Right? Because what that tells me is they're dangerous. And when I say react badly, they're allowed to be hurt or disappointed or all those things. But if they are angry and guilt trip me, or, weaponize victim the spaces or any of that stuff, it's like, ooh, that's a giant red flag I need to pay attention to. I don't want to be in relationship with people who are going to respond to my no in that way. Right? And so actually, when you don't use your no, you put yourself at such high risk, because what you do is you don't filter, you don't weed out the toxic people, you just leave space for them in your life, because they're never revealing how they feel about you and your boundaries. All they're doing is hearing you say yes, so they just take it. What you need is people who are saying to you, where is your no? Why are you saying that? Why aren't you delegating it? Give it to someone else to do, right?
Yeah.
You don't need to run every email by me. There is the space of no is the greatest shield of all that you possess. In my experience, my belief system, that if you are not using your no, you are putting yourself at risk in a very big way. And so with that, what I wonder is, so when your brain is in that like massive like state and go, don't do it, what would it be like to turn to it literally as though it was a human being and say, it's okay, we're going to be okay. This is a good thing. How would that feel in the moment? Would you be able to do it, or?
Yes, I think that would feel comforting, and probably the arm around little Laura that would need that at that time to be able to support her through saying that. And actually I've never thought about personifying it and actually having that ability in the moment to, I think that could be quite powerful.
When our brain is in that high alert, it's usually little us just going, don't do it, please don't do it, you're going to get us in trouble, and oh my God, my God, oh my God. And if we can turn around and say to our younger self, it's okay, I've got this. You know, what do you I understand you're scared. Not don't be scared, but it's okay. I can protect us. It's not a bad thing. We're going to be okay. It's all right to be scared, but we can say no. We're allowed to do that now. Because if someone is mean to our no, then we can protect ourselves more. We don't need a grown-up to tell us, to protect us anymore. We can do it for ourselves.
I think that could be so powerful in the moment.
I think it could be. That's okay. So as we're sort of coming to the end, Laura, I wonder, is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to unpick further, or is there anything else to ask?
I don't think from what we've spoken about, I feel we've touched on all of the kind of core areas that I was looking to get some tools and assistance on how better that I can approach them and cope with them whilst now having in that moment experience. Yeah. And I think that's going to be really, really helpful for me. So no, I think at this stage, I think you've been able to give me some really good tools and ways that I can cope in the moment.
Awesome. The one that I haven't actually said, which is really vital, is the giving yourself pause in the moment. So when someone's saying, can you do this thing, you can just say, let me think about it and I'll come back to you.
Do you know, so I really struggle with that. Struggle with it. I'm a panic speaker. I cannot stand silence. It makes me feel uncomfortable. And very recently, I was it was a function for work, and somebody actually said to me, in that moment, say to yourself, wait. And when you say it, it says to you, why am I talking? And I was like, actually, that's so great. Helpful, because then I and a couple of times since then, I play it back to myself and I go, wait, why am I talking?
Oh, that's amazing.
And it just bides me that little bit of time to not panic feel those awkward moments. And I think that is certainly an area that I need to practice, which is waiting and just having a moment and taking a moment to not immediately come back with something or want to, I call it filibustering, because I do it all the time. But it's definitely something I need to practice more, put into practice more.
It's a really hard skill. I remember the first time I ever saw it done by someone else was I was working for a therapist, and she was having a meeting with a group of therapists, and they were discussing this thing, and they asked her this, like, would she do, or what does she think about that? And she just went, something about that's making me feel uncomfortable, but I don't know what it is. I'll come back to you. And it was like, you're allowed to do that? Oh my God. And nobody said a word. Nobody bothered. It was it was revolutionary. This was prior to me being a therapist. And it was like, oh my goodness me, you're allowed to do that. And this thing of pause, the skill of it is to be so attuned to your body that you learn to listen for the tug and then act on the tug rather than the thought, right?
Yeah.
So it's really about whenever somebody asks you a question, you almost body scan to notice if there's any sensations, and then if they're, respond accordingly to those, and just the not sure, I'll come back to you, or whatever it is that you need to put in place, or I'll let you know. You don't even say I'm not sure. I'll let you know. I'll come back to you. Is a valid answer and gives you that reflective space, because when you're in that panic, I've got to answer straight away because they need the answer, because obviously you're in servitude, because that's what people pleasing is in servitude to other people.
Yeah.
When you're in servitude, you panic if you can't serve straight away. So
Yes.
we're trying to challenge the panic and say they are able to wait.
Yeah. Yes, I panic in the moment all the time, especially in corporate life. What you just said there, I really relate with that servitude, and I must give a response now, and I must. And one thing that I have taken recently in my journey of my incremental no's is, at first when I started to say and practice no, I would over-explain my no. And I would say no, or I would say no, and then give a really long explanation as to why my no is valid. And recently I've tried to teach myself and accept that no is a complete sentence.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, Laura. Yes,
And
you don't have to justify or explain. And in fact, when you do, people don't believe you.
And
you're making excuses.
It's something that I practice with my husband all the time. We both have a struggle there, and we find it quite often when we're invited to something that we just don't want to do, or we don't want to go to, and so we think, and it's that kind of servitude moment where you panic and you think to yourself, I must give them a plausible reason. I must give them a really elaborate reason as to why I am going to say no to that thing. And then in that moment, we look at each other now and we just say, no is a complete sentence.
Yeah.
And that's as far as it goes. I'm trying to practice that more.
So, do you know what you might be doing in that moment when you're thinking about giving them a plausible reason?
When I'm trying to give them a reason, I'm trying to cushion the blow of my no.
Yeah.
And people please them with I'm saying no, but please don't hate me because I'm saying no, because there is a very logical reason as to why I'm trying to say no to you. And
what else? So on the sort of layer one, it's to cushion the blow so they don't hate you. If we went down under that even further, what might else be under there?
I would say it's trying to make me feel better and safe about delivering the no, and reassuring myself that it's okay.
Okay, and then if we go even further down, anything else that you notice?
It's not coming to me straight away, I have to say.
Okay, that's all right, because it's quite deep level. But there might be two more things. One, well, I would say argue that this is absolutely true, which is that you are trying to manage their feelings, which you've kind of said already by don't hate me. So you're managing their feelings, which is almost denying their autonomy. So we have to be very careful about it, because that's kind of the dark side of people pleasing, is that it can be very toxic in that way, in that because we're managing someone else's feelings all the time, we are not being authentic to ourselves or allowing them space to be authentic. So, no, I can't because Jim Bob has to go up a mountain to get a bucket of water, and they come, that doesn't leave them to express disappointment because you've given them a really good reason why you can't come to this thing. And instead they have to just accept it rather than say, oh, I'm really gutted you're not going to be there, or whatever it might be. And they might be able to say it, but it limits that space, okay? And then underneath all of that is you're possibly possibly projecting onto them your own feelings of rejection, assuming that they will feel the same way you do about rejection, which is also going to be playing out in your work environment. That if you say no, they're going to be hurt, and in turn that might be angry, or their reaction to rejection is going to be XYZ, and it's going to come back at me in this way. So I have to manage their feelings so that they don't punish me for it.
So when you were speaking just then, the word predictable came up for me. So you what you're doing, what I would be doing is managing those feelings to better be able to predict their reaction.
Yes.
To the news or my no.
Yes.
And I think it ties back to that bit at the beginning where I was saying about cushioning the blow.
Yeah.
I'm then trying to manage and make it predictable how they're going to react to me.
Exactly.
So if I say it in this particular way and I give them this particular response, which is very plausible, well then they can't respond in a explosive way because I've justified to myself that was a very reasonable and plausible thing for me to use as my excuse or my reasoning.
Yeah. So what you're trying to do is influence their behaviour.
Yeah.
And their feelings. And can you see how that in itself could be quite toxic if we're not careful with it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is the very difficult thing about people pleasing and really pulling it apart, is that we do notice that there is some quite difficult behaviour involved with it, and it can make people spiral into a kind of shame spiral. And I want to just tell you and anybody listening is that these are coping mechanisms you develop to survive a very, very difficult environment. You had to do this to survive. The fact that you're sitting with me now, or anybody else is listening, to build their self-awareness and understand their behaviour and learn how to start being authentic and honest about their feelings and their needs, shows that that is not who they are. That is who they learnt to be to survive, right? And there is a very, very big difference between that person and the person that knows exactly what they're doing and why they're doing it to get a certain response or whatever, right? That is a very different thing. And yes, the impact might be similar, but when you start looking and taking responsibility for it, that there is such grace in that we have to give ourselves. You didn't know what you didn't know, and this is the place where we talk about being kind to ourselves. Hold ourselves accountable, don't give ourselves excuses, try and change the behaviour, but also be kind, because that we stand on the shoulders of those survival mechanisms. We live today because of those survival mechanisms, and we need to show them gratitude, not shame, because that is not helping. It just capitalizes on the trauma that we experienced that created them in the first place. So yeah, I just want to really make that very clear that we don't sit in a blame or shame space having used some of that behaviour. Yeah.
No, definitely.
Fabulous. Laura, are you okay with that? Was there anything else? Did you want to say anything else? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling really uplifted, which is really positive, and I feel better prepared coming into what we call silly season, because we are coming into year end. And actually the beginning part of the year is one of our busiest times. So it's come at a really good time, especially coming into the festive season where I've got annual leave and, my boundaries before would have meant, you need me, I'll hop back on and I'll do something. And now actually I feel empowered to be able to say no and keep the boundary of what I've set myself this Christmas. So, yes.
That's amazing. Amazing. Laura, thank you so much for talking to me. It's just been an absolute joy pulling this apart with you. Such big revelations around the relational pattern and understanding where all the fear is coming from, and being, able to give you some tools to try and challenge the behavior and maybe change it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My absolute pleasure. Well, I guess with that, I think we will wrap up there. And I suppose all I need to say is thank you to all our listeners and supporters. So all that remains to be said is take care. Bye.
Bye.